My name is Vanessa Garrett. I am the program manager at Motherhood Beyond Bars. We provide support and direct services to every pregnant and postpartum woman in Georgia prisons and the infant that she leaves behind. Our programs aim to keep families whole and healthy. Motherhood Beyond Bars is currently the only nonprofit in the state that has contact with the caregivers. Thanks to our collaboration with Harvard's School of Public Health, we're able to track the impacts of maternal incarceration the moment the infant is picked up from the hospital. We work hard to build these relationships with currently incarcerated people and their families, and we hear directly from women and their concerned family members just about daily about the neglect and mistreatment of people held in Georgia's prison system. Over the past year, I have been increasingly concerned by the level of neglect that women are experiencing while they are pregnant and in their postpartum stages. Since the passage of House Bill 345, the anti-shackling law, I was hopeful that women serving sentences would no longer experience these bodily harms and indignities. That has not been the case. Women as recent as 3 weeks ago are still being shackled, strip searched, forced to squat and cough, and lack basic hygiene supplies, such as sanitary napkins and the inadequate amount of clean underwear and uniforms. As you know, all of this has been prohibited by the provisions set forth in House Bill 345, which went into effect on October 1st, 2019. Women routinely complain that their requests for medical attention are ignored until it's almost too late. We recently heard from a woman who went into labor at Homes, which is the facility where all pregnant women in Georgia are. She was in labor for 4 hours, and her cries for help went ignored. When an ambulance was finally called, she was rushed to the hospital and delivered her baby in a hospital elevator, naked from the waist down and vulnerable to the passersby witnessing. In another instance, a woman's request to have her painful episiotomy stitches examined was ignored. It took her 2 weeks to be seen, and it was confirmed infected, but she received no medical care. That mother, so desperate for help, borrowed a pair of nail clippers and, with the use of a mirror, cut out her swollen and infected stitches. Currently, there's a woman in the infirmary at Lee Arundel who is being neglected. I know because we just had mothers in the infirmary traumatized by the lack of care that this woman is receiving. They reported that her recent cesarean incisions are exposed, risking infection, and that she's lying in her own feces. She's offered a shower only once a week and is essentially comatose. When these witnesses tried to call home, desperate to work through their own feelings about what they were seeing, they were prevented from using the kiosk for 3 days. They couldn't use the phone for 3 days. They were silenced and prevented from seeking help from their family for this emotional trauma that they were witnessing. I have personal experience of GDC's attempt to silence those in their custody. I was released from a GDC work release facility in January of this year. As of April of last year, just as the country was shutting down due to COVID-19, a woman was sick. She was put in isolation. It's a holding cell with no ventilation, no toilet, no bathroom, and she wasn't monitored. Through the door, we could hear her gasping and wheezing for air, and we were all scared. Our cries to get help were ignored by staff, so we called home. Some people reached out to the woman's family. 2 days later, we were told if we made any calls to our family to report what was happening to the sick woman, we would all have our cell phones confiscated. Scared for her, scared for ourselves, and we were forced into silence. When I was at the transitional center, I was one of 10 women who piled into a van every day to clean state facilities. During the height of COVID, 5 of us on that 10-passenger van became very ill, but only one of us was ever tested. Her COVID result was positive, and only she was brought into quarantine, taking away her phone, taking away her property, and they demanded the rest of us to get back on that van to continue our unpaid labor, risking the community spread of this deadly virus. I can tell many more stories of inadequate medical care, pleas for help going ignored, cries to families intimidated into silence, and women treated with no regard for their humanity. Because of the horrible and horrific experiences I have witnessed firsthand, I've made a commitment through my work and my advocacy at Motherhood Beyond Bars to care for currently incarcerated women by making sure that I am their silenced voice, to shed some light and to alleviate the traumas caused by these gross violations of their human rights. So I'd like to thank the legislators here today for your attention to this matter and to offer myself as a further resource if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Garrett, both for testifying to what you've experienced personally and also for the work that you've done. We'll be happy to open it up if anybody has any questions. Representative Moore.
Thank you so much for coming forward and sharing the stories, your own stories and those of the women around you. I find the story of the woman with the nail clippers to be the worst of the worst. I was wondering if you could please give us some more details while the media is listening, and please don't hold back on the language you used to describe what happened to this woman.
She had a baby and it required episiotomy stitches, and from the hospital she was sent to the Arizona State Prison. She had mentioned that it was very sore and very painful down there. She could hardly clean, and she sought medical help. Medical refused to see her the first 2 times that she asked for help. A lot of the problem, I do believe, is because she didn't have but 1 pair of underwear, which is beyond crazy to me, especially for a woman who has just had a baby. She explained that to the intake coordinator, who said that when more came in, that they would give it to her. I don't know if that did happen, but I do know that when she finally did get to medical, they did look at her and they said, "Oh yeah, they're swollen." And she said, "Well, can you help? Can I get antibiotics?" And they said, "There's nothing we can do. It heals on its own." So she sat like that for another 3 days and then could no longer sit. And at that point, I received communication from her that they're out. So I was excited, thinking, great, they saw you, they took care of you. And she said, "No, I borrowed my roommate's nail clippers and borrowed another roommate's mirror and laid there in the bed and cut them out. And I just did not want to ask if she cleaned the nail clippers first, but I just knew she was that desperate to get them out that she used nail clippers."
Thank you. So to summarize, this woman received vaginal stitches as a result of her birth. And she was denied the medical treatment to remove infected stitches from her vagina, and she had to cut them out herself with a pair of nail clippers.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, is there anybody else who has any questions for Ms. Garrett? Thank you, Ms. Garrett. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.